Good afternoon. So we have the post-lunch session, always the most exciting session. I think the whole thing about post-lunch sessions is that you have to work harder to wake up people. So they tend to be, I think a global survey of post-lunch sessions would show that they are more exciting, they're the most exciting sessions in the day, simply because of the demand and supply situation. So we have an interesting subject here. We hope that will help wake up people. Because smart homes, a lot of stuff, you hear about smart homes, smart cities. The new government is very interested in smart cities. Then, we're having these multi-day conferences on whatever is a smart city, and there's, at the end of 2 days, there's never any consensus on what is a smart city. But we're going to try to keep this in the context of what we have as the background subject here today, the opportunities for the telecom industry. Clearly, the telecom industry is in a situation where, well, not an enviable situation. Enormous growth, so enormous numbers, enormous investments in spectrum, license, 3G, 14 billion, 4G, $7-8 billion, then 2G all over again, and then CapEx. So, you're talking of some 30 or 40 billion dollars invested out there with no path to recovery. And clearly the way ahead is supposed to be data. And who's going to buy the data? Well, all these people sitting on that huge pyramid are not buying that much of data. They're buying some data, and there's a lot more smartphones selling. We heard that earlier in the day. So clearly one big opportunity is this whole other devices, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, smart cities, smart homes. And I guess we'll get a chance to look at that and then, kind of interact with you a little bit and see where we see this opportunity kind of going. We have a good cross-section here. It's a small panel, but kind of focused and relevant from the different segments. I'm going to ask each of them to kind of give a very short background and one key thing which they'd like to see, and we'll go straight into the discussions. I want to start off with my own experience. So I'm Prashanto Roy. I've been a technology journalist for 25 years actually, out of which 23 were with cyber media. In the last year, I took a bit of a break to do a lot of fun things, and one of those fun things was building a green home. So this was the first home in the country to get a green certification. It was the first home to register for a green rating, which happened in 2011. And in January, we got a Terry Griha 5-star rating for this. So again, this was the first to get that rating. Now, the interesting thing was that my idea was not just to build one home, but to help Terry evangelize green homes, smart green homes, energy efficient homes, and all of that. So in the last 2.5 years, I've been speaking at conferences like this one. Why a green home? Why did I do it? Why did I go for a rating? And in these 2 years, from 2 years ago when my home registered to now, Terry has about maybe 10 or 12 more homes in the country which have registered for green. LEED has another, I think maybe 5 to 10 homes. So where I thought there'd be 1 million homes in 2 years, we've got 20. So clearly, on one side, if I were to look at where my green home was, I thought it was a great success. It got a 5-star rating and all of that, first in the country. On the other side, I thought it would be a model which would be replicated, and Terry would have millions of people queuing up to do green homes, and nobody did. So clearly, there was a huge gap in conveying the benefits of green homes and then scaling it up to the level where it's interesting as an opportunity for other related sectors like telecom, which would allow those homes to connect and so on. It's clearly a failure of communication about that opportunity to builders. Now, again, in the north, this region where we are, most of the development is happening in Gurgaon, followed by Noida. Gurgaon has 280 real estate projects, large ones, underway now. Zero green. Yes, you'll see some signboards and hoardings saying, oh, we have some green building project or something, but most of them are, there's a golf course or there's a tree or something, and that makes it green. So it's obviously not really what we're looking at in terms of green. So the developers have, for whatever reason, failed to see that opportunity. And one thing was clear to me in my interactions and the many, many talks I've given over green buildings and smart buildings is that nobody gives a damn about environment. Okay, you'll see a lot of people saying, yes, yes, we must save the environment for our children. But they'll go out and do exactly what they were doing and get back to work after that. And, nobody is going to say, oh, I'm going to do this, build a green home to save the environment. But there are clearly other very, very clear benefits which are more immediate, okay, which we have not been able to sell. By we, I mean the industry at large, organizations like Terry and USGBC, which does lead. So I'm going to put this to the panel here really. We are seeing a major opportunity ahead for connected devices, connected homes, connected cities. All that connectivity will come from somewhere and will come from you folks, ladies and gentlemen, who of the telecom industry. But how do we get to that scale? How do we get builders to recognize the opportunity? Because builders are not, they're not interested in environment. We've established that. They're not interested in saving energy. That is fairly clear. They're interested in their property and what they're able to sell at what price. And if they see something which will get them 20% more per square foot and brand it as a premium property, etc., of course they will be interested. They will jump to it. Okay. So the question is, what is this opportunity? How do we quantify it? And how do we get to the kind of scale that we require for this? And I'll leave this to the panel to very briefly introduce themselves, their company, and their connect with this segment. And give me a total of maybe 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes initially per panelist to set the context and how do they see this whole thing scaling to a level where it will be of interest to this audience. Okay, so let me start in no particular order. From my immediate right, maybe Vishal, would you give it a shot?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, no, you're okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Vishal Dhar. I work with iYogi. I'm one of the founders of the business. We set up a business which was to manage the increasing complexity in homes with the proliferation of technologies. The company is only 7 years old, but within those 7 years, we've seen a dramatic shift in how people are using technology, the increasing dependency on different types of technologies and functionalities. Also different types of use cases that are ingratiating our lives, specifically with what people are terming as Internet of Things. To give you some numbers very quickly, the numbers of installed PCs was 1 billion in 2008, which reached 2 billion in 2012. Gartner predicts by 2020 the number of IoT devices in homes are going to be 28 billion. So that's the dramatic shift we are seeing. Telecom companies are at the forefront of managing customers who are with respect to data and with respect to their device usage. So we feel they're an ideal partner for how we can actually expand our business. We currently, just to give you a quick stat, we operate in 11 countries, have 2.5 million users. We deploy 5,000 people, have the largest database of knowledge solutions which are partially automated to manage a very hybrid infrastructure in homes. I look forward to participating with these two panelists who come from very innovative companies, Honeywell and Samsung. And I think both of them are going to be leaders in that home ecosystem.
Thanks, Vishal. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jasmeet Bhatia. I represent Honeywell. Honeywell, as some of you might be knowing, is a $40 billion Fortune 100 company. I'm here representing the OEM community to some extent, which makes products for making the home smarter. So it's a very exciting platform for me to come here, interact with you, and to also share my experiences and opinions on how this market is expected to shape up. I totally agree with what PK and Vishal just mentioned. It's a very exciting opportunity for all of us, not only the telcos, but be it OEMs, be it developers, be it app developers, all of us have a lot of exciting times coming ahead of us. Now, I think most of us have smartphones and we are connected to each other. So I think as humans, increasingly we are getting connected. The next phase of connection will be homes, smarter homes, connected homes, and connected business, and eventually it will be connected cities or smart cities as the term is already being floated around. So that's probably the evolutionary curve that is expected to happen, and it's going to happen sooner than later. We already have the technology with us. In some developed countries, they already have launched products. It's the market, it's you and I who need to open up, be more aware, and accept that. And I think it'll be a very fruitful discussion between all of us to actually see how we can increase our awareness and actually create the demand for the technology which is already there in the market to make all our lives more productive and more efficient.
Thanks, Jasmeet. So Tarun, you come from Samsung, and clearly one component of the home and then beyond is a whole lot of connected devices, and we see that as far more immediate because even before the so-called smart home, people have had smart TVs and devices which connect to the internet on their own or through the network. Now there are lots of wearables which are part of this ecosystem and beyond. Okay, so where do you see this leading up to an opportunity for telcos?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I think PK has put it very simply in terms of laying the landscape for green homes and smart homes. I think it's a little bit more complex than that because there are 3 or 4 factors really play in everybody's mind. One of them, of course, is scale. If I look at it from a telco perspective, they look at scale. How can I scale this? If I look at it from a consumer point of view, it's always affordability. Is it really fitting into my budget? And is it so important that I need to spend that extra money? If I look at it from a Samsung's point of view, so we believe that there is a little bit of Samsung in everybody's home, and we are a very critical player in this whole IoT ecosystem. And we are taking the lead in terms of even creating technology which is going to try and fulfill all these needs. In terms of where we are today, the most important thing which touches us beyond smart TVs and smart devices is, let's say, home security systems. Most of us try and invest in home security system, whether it's a condominium or whether it's an independent house. That's the closest we get to a sort of a smart home solution. I think where the market is going in most of the mature markets like US and Europe is all-in-one sort of a solution where I have a handheld device which sort of controls most of my stuff. I don't need to have multiple remotes, multiple switches. Or I have a wearable around my wrist or elsewhere which I can talk to and give commands and makes life a little bit simpler for me. It does have it up and down. There is a huge potential if I was to just say from a Indian ecosystem. So if I was a telco, there is going to be a huge amount of data usage. There is going to be connectivity. If I'm a developer, yeah, sure. It helps me sort of create extra money from the consumer. As a consumer, I'm looking for a security as well as I'm looking for a sort of ease of use. And there's a premium attached to that. So I think the convergence of these 3-4 things will really bring out a combination which seems like the most workable from an industry ecosystem perspective.
Okay, great. So I think we've got pretty good base on which to take this up. If you look at the amount of data today, it's clearly, there is a growing amount of data driven on one side by smartphones. Most of the internet connections, I mean, TRAI now announces some 220 or 230 million who are accessing the internet through their mobile device, the full-fledged internet. Okay. Now the question is how much of other data, how much of devices, so in other words, how much of non-human usage is there? Okay, we don't seem to have a clear, I don't know if anybody has a better figure there, but we know it's somewhere in the range of maybe 5 or 10% here, or maybe less than that, maybe it's in the 5-6% range. In other words, if you look at SIM cards alone, which go into just devices, and that is a pretty, in other countries, there are very, very high figures. For instance, Finland, which is of course a very, very tiny country, maybe 5 million people, they have 7, 8, 9 million phone connections, and many of them are actually devices. Dogs, rescue dogs have little collars with whatever. So huge, huge difference there. So I want to just ask, everyone here, maybe Jasmeet, starting with you, how do you get to this scale? Now, when you approach developers, I mean, clearly one of the large focal points for you in terms of looking at scale would be large developers rather than individual homes in terms of marketing. What do you think works for them? I mean, what are they looking for? Why is there a difficulty in communicating the benefits of automation systems and things which will make life easier and things more energy efficient and so on? Now, clearly, they themselves are not going to be end users of what they're building, so their interest in making the whole place great is low. But why can't they see it as something they can sell and command a premium for?
Sure. Very optimum question, because the point here is the use cases that we have in India are different than those that we have in the US. So the way that Indian consumers views a product and views its value is very different from how a person in the US or Europe kind of perceives it. So that's one of the reasons why developers are finding it a little difficult to offer products like cameras, intrusion alarms, and other smart devices in a home, because the Indian consumer views them differently and probably does not value them as much as a person in, say, a US or Europe will. Let me give you a very simple example. So some of the developers, they start offering intrusion products, intrusion alarms in your homes. It's a very big market in the US because of the nature of the user. There are smaller families, nuclear families, bigger homes. The homes are separated and at quite a big distance from each other. But in India, we have more number of family members, small communities. Even if you shout in one room, you'll see the neighbors coming in. So in India, intrusion alarms are just not being valued right now because the use case is very different. So the developers did try that, and eventually they realized that maybe we need to do something else. Maybe we need to create products which are more which specifically address the needs of the Indian consumer. So very simply put, the developers are aware of the technology, but it's just that they are not able to communicate the value prop. And even if they are, the market views the value prop a little differently. So I think the answer to that is that the developers, along with OEMs and the telcos, need to create products and solutions which are specific India-focused, which serve the needs of the Indian consumer, and that's when you'll see the demand picking up.
So just to add to that, my earlier question, you know, what are the numbers like? So for example, if you look at a premium development complex in Gurgaon, you know, the kind of they're selling at pretty high per square foot rate, somewhere, you know, maybe 15,000 per square foot, etc. This sort of an automation system, you know, an automation electronic security system, how much would it typically add to this cost? Would it be 5% or less?
It's around 5 to 10% range.
5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Okay. But now what we see is the fluctuations in real estate are themselves way more than that, or the change across a year, or, you know, somebody puts in Italian marble and somebody puts in Jaguar fittings and Grohe fittings and then says this is premium plus. And so now instead of 10, it's 14,000 per square foot. So we see far bigger, you know, changes which are, this seems to be something which is more crystallizable and quantifiable, and yet it hasn't really picked up. It's the same with green and energy efficiency and all of that.
Right. So absolutely right. The answer to that is if it's 20,000 per square foot kind of a home, they'll put a premium product. If it's a 10,000 square foot kind of home, they'll put a mid-segment product, say an Indian brand or a Chinese brand. And if it is, say, a 2,000 per square foot, they probably won't put anything. So there are different brands at different price points, and a developer, considering the size of its project and the kind of segment, the user segment that they plan to offer it to, tweak their offering accordingly. So you'll have top-end developers like, say, the Lodhas of the world who go for premium brands and more integrated home automation systems, whereas there'll be mid-segment builders who probably just will offer a simple video door phone. And that's how they say that this is home automation that I'm offering. Essentially, it's a video door phone. So that's how different developers are pitching different products of different quality, and also the value prop that they are offering are different. So a mid-sized developer, he will never really go for a very high-end home automation product because his buyer, in turn, will not value it and will not be able to afford it. Unlike the marble example that you gave, as we were discussing earlier, it's something that you can touch and feel, and you can appreciate the value of an Italian marble in a home, but something like an intrusion alarm or a smart device, that's something that, since they're not very aware, they won't realize its value till they actually start using it, start playing with it. And that will happen only when they buy the property. So that's a little conundrum that the developer needs to solve.
So I guess things like intrusion alarms and security systems, the other problem would be that in these large complexes, there's a lot of security. So the need to put individual systems in individual apartments, people might feel they're kind of lower.
Absolutely. So there are, sorry, Vishal, please.
There are 2 points here, PK. One is, you know, the cost. The cost can't be 5 to 10% of the construction cost of the real estate cost. That's too high. So if the cost comes down, and the benefits are better explained. So the benefit is not that you're putting another widget in your home. The benefit is that it's actually saving lives. It's actually making sure there is no gas leakage. So there's a sensor for that. There's a healthcare, so if there's actually health applications or use cases that are, so the benefits need to be communicated better, which is not being communicated right now. So all you see in home automation is basically spilling out, or what is the convenience of managing your thermostat from your mobile, but that's not actually what'll drive mass adoption. So it'll be 2 points. One is less expensive devices and that the developers can use. And the second is actually better communication of the benefits that can come from these devices.
So I agree with you on that, and I think maybe the cost might actually be significantly less as a percentage, because I know from my own experience for my home, which was a Terry Greer 5-star, the additional cost was in the 8 to 10% per square foot range. But that is for the entire green thing, and much of that cost was the HVAC, because the air cons were all 5-star rated, almost 3 times the price of an unrated air conditioner. All other electronics, LED, all of that put together. The security system and some of the automation systems, the motion sensors, the automation control for the lights, I guess if I break it up, it must have been in the 1 or 2% range. So clearly, that is something maybe a little easier to sell.
But if I want to interrupt 1 second, but if your HVAC costs more, but it actually saves you 25% energy on a monthly basis, that's the benefit which needs to be communicated.
Absolutely. So clearly, I mean, that was the reason why we went in for it, and it's a key part of that green system. And it's very visible. It saves you this much money. And I think, so for example, we are seeing water heating geysers. 5-star geysers have taken off in a big way because the cost differential is actually fairly low.
Right.
And you save quite a bit on those. So that's a very visible benefit. Tarun, how do you see I mean, clearly people buying smarter connected devices in the home, like TV sets, etc., they're paying a premium. So they seem to be happily buying it, although I don't know what is the extent of penetration in markets like ours. Now, while the individual, the ticket prices, the average sale price for those are far lower than what we're talking about a home. But then, those are clearly, I mean, a TV which is 60, 70,000 rupees, a smarter version of that which is connected, etc., might actually be double of that, or might be, 60, 70% more than that. So people are spending in that. So how do you see this? Can we learn from this and see how, or is it that they're seeing the benefits of that far more clearly? Because even somebody comes and tells you that, oh, this TV will connect to the internet. Is there a clear, visible benefit of that? And can that sort of a benefit not be there in the connected home equivalent of that?
Okay. PK, there are 2 points that I'd like to make. First one is I agree with Vishal about the affordability bit. Even as basic, like Jasmeet said, a door locking system would cost about, I think, 1,500 or 2,000 bucks per unit. And for a developer who's making about 500 units in a sort of a condominium, it's a significant cost. So affordability is one. Secondly, when I look at smart TVs and the whole ecosystem around us, I think the world is moving towards multiple screens, whether we realize it or not, but actually we're adding a lot of screens in our lives. So there is a smart TV, there is a mobile, the screen size of the mobile is increasing, there is a tablet, today cars have a screen, today the hotels have a screen, besides the television screen. So definitely, at the hindsight, there is a whole lot of data that's coming to us, whether it's form of video content, whether it's form of something that you want to read. on the screen, then it's much more easier than anything else, like a book, for example, carrying it around. I know you're carrying one with yourself. So that's the second point. Thirdly, in the future, in the next 12 to 18 months, I see a lot of convergence happening, which essentially means that if I'm carrying something on my one screen, which is like a handheld device, I want the same data to transfer to my tablet. Maybe when I get home, I want the same movie to play on my television, or maybe to take a call through the television, video call. So that convergence has to happen. And lastly, I don't need so many devices, so much of technology. I need something simpler, user-friendly, and cheaper. So if I look at convergence of all these three things or four things, and then I look at how sort of a green impact that they're going to create in the ecosystem, I think there has to be a balance, which is the rating that you're talking about, the 5-star rating in devices, which is what the world is aiming to. And secondly, the fact of affordability. India has been a very price-sensitive market. So how much ever technology are introduced, at the end of the day, it is going to be price that's going to really look at the value of that particular technology, unless everybody in this room and everybody elsewhere feels that this is the most important part of my life that I have to have in a house. So realistically speaking, I think we are, as an economy, we are far behind in terms of any sort of automation. There is a huge opportunity both for the ecosystem, the industry ecosystem, and the consumers. Somebody probably will have to take the lead in terms of, like Vishal said, conveying the benefits and looking at a sort of a ROI comparison that I have to pay, or this is the incremental cost that I'm paying on an average middle-income household to get all these things out of convenience or out of necessity. So it should not be, or it won't be restricted to only the premium houses in the country where, if somebody has a 10,000 square feet house, he goes for a state-of-the-art, upmarket motion sensors and stuff like that. I think it's going to trickle down in the pyramid. And maybe it's not going to be so fast, but I see this change happening in the next 12 to 18 months. Of course, there's a lot of push by the government in terms of smart cities. And I know for sure that the government is pushing for a lot of digitization in a lot of aspects. So I think that push probably will create a sort of revolution where the sort of information is going to be available to the consumers, and that's going to kickstart it.
Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break for some interaction and questions, and then I want to just, in the second part of this, just ask all of you gentlemen here, what is the role of the telco in your experience in other, other countries, other parts of the world in this ecosystem? I mean, clearly the telco has a role, but how does it come in? Does it come in as a partner? Now, if you actually see, and I'd like to put this question to you, and most of you are related to the telecom industry, where have you seen this opportunity today, if not the smart home, which is kind of new, or the smart city? But in terms of devices, now, for example, I was really interested to see this modeling in this description of what happens to the network. We often have so I was in this Airtel knock in Manesar. So one of the things we were discussing, why does it happen when we land into a city in an airport? It takes a long time to connect. When you're roaming, so it doesn't, sometimes you set it manual, etc. Then we looked at what happens when, let's say, a 747 or any other aircraft actually lands. You suddenly have 1,000 plus, 1,500 SIMs trying to connect to the network. And why do you have so many? Because each person has multiple devices. There are iPads, there are 1 or 2 phones, there could be other devices there. All of these are suddenly connected. Many of them are just on. They don't even switch them off. They suddenly connect to the network. But look at it from the telco's side as an opportunity that, from a situation where you are struggling to monetize this one customer with one SIM card, you suddenly have an opportunity of fairly high-paying, high-net-worth individuals who have at least 3 or 4 SIM cards, and they're paying you for all of that connectivity. So how do you see this opportunity, and how are you leveraging it? Are there interesting examples that you have of really using data to up your ARPUs and your total revenue? Any other questions? So let me just take a break for some questions and comments from you in the audience. Yes, ma'am, let's start with you. Great to have a lady asking the first question. Do we have a mic for the audience, please? Yeah, there's a mic coming to you. Do introduce yourself briefly and ask your question.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Asha Rajkumari. I'm from Newcall Telecom. The question, or my point of view, it's from a consumer point of view. It's regarding the smart homes. We were talking about intrusion alarms. I use a Honeywell intrusion alarm at home, and I have my extended family, almost every one of us use it, because we live in a place which is kind of very far away from the city, and security is an issue there. Now, buying it, first of all, we were talking about 3 points. First was the cost factor. The second was sharing the benefits, educating the benefits of it to consumers. But I believe that the most important factor which will drive it to growth is the after-sales service. Because we use it, but whenever we have an issue, there's no one to help us. We have the system which should alarm the police station, should alarm relatives, should alarm everyone, all the emergency numbers, and it's a system which is connected to all the windows, all the doors. If there is any disconnect in any of them, the complete system fails. So it's a word of mouth which will drive the growth. But if there is no service after you buy it, there's no way that it's going to grow. I won't go and buy it again, nor will I recommend to another person.
In fact, I would also probably add to that you know, maybe even the opportunity to integrate these systems properly, maybe the integration hasn't happened properly in the first place. And that could be an issue, which is why you're actually seeing so many issues actually coming up. And then, of course, the one-stop shop for...
My request to Honeywell would be, you sell it. How about you service it after? Because it's Eureka Forbes, which does the customer care for us. But since it really doesn't affect them directly, the response is not great. But for you, it is directly affecting your sales.
I think I mean, what we do as a company, that's what we do. We actually provide support for different types of technologies. So over 500 different types of technologies, actually helping them install them, integrate them, set them up, making sure they're working with different protocols, networks, and so on and so forth. I completely agree with you. I think adoption of newer technologies is going to be higher if there's somebody to set them up, making sure it's working with your existing environment, helping you integrate and seeing that the installation is done correctly, and usability assistance, which is actually increasing because you've got different screens, different apps, is what Tarun was mentioning, and there are different use cases. So all of this is new. We all need some amount of hand-holding to get us through this.
Yeah.
I fully, you know, I mean, I'm absolutely with that, and I can empathize. I mean, in my green home, I have a nightmare of support issues because there are so many disparate systems, you know. There's the electronics, there's the solar heating, and when there's an issue with that, I don't have a single place to go to. And for many of these vendors, this is all experimental because, you know, no house has done it. So I'm a great guinea pig. But at the end of the day, when I have an issue, in fact, Jasmeet, I mean, and I'll leave you to answer this. One of the issues I faced is even before the stage that Asha is mentioning, I didn't have information about what is available as a package for a home. I wanted sensors and systems which would tell me over the internet, etc., how much energy was being consumed by what, to remotely switch on and switch off HVAC. But I was getting individual disparate quotes for different things at whopping prices, which I finally said, okay, forget it, because there is going to be nobody to come together and put it together, and there's going to be nobody maybe to support it. So do you have a thought on this?
Right. In fact, that was my first question. I was about to ask, how did you actually get to know and buy intrusion? And as PK is rightly saying, that itself is one of the challenges that customers face. They don't know what is there out in the market that can actually help them make their home secure. And I agree with you. As Honeywell, there is a lot that we need to do in terms of creating that right ecosystem which helps serve us, our customers better. So we are dealing it in two ways. One is we are making the products so simple that half of the issues can be resolved by the user itself. So making the product simpler to install, simpler to use, simpler to service. And second, create that community in which the installations, commissioning, post-sales, all of that is taken care of. So one thing which works in the US, which is still not here, is the concept of central monitoring. So in the US, how it happens is that all the intrusion alarms are being monitored by a third party sitting out of somewhere. And the moment a sensor gives an alert, they call you or they call the police. That's on. And, but in India, we are working towards creating that kind of a business model in which there are alarm monitoring agencies which, say, monitor all the homes in a community. And
Yeah, thank you, Jasmeet.
Yeah.
Yeah, this system is already there.
Yeah.
Because we have a company who's supposed to respond to us and call us the moment the alarm goes off.
Right.
Yeah, it's about effectiveness. Because of direct link with the cost factor or the revenue factor.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll do is let me see if there are some other questions too. We have just about 10, 12 more minutes. And anything on the telco side, any of the telcos in terms of the opportunity that you see? I'd seen a hand or two going up at the back. Either your questions have vanished or they've... So any other questions? Okay, so let me then get to the second part of this and maybe we can take this up in some more detail either at the end or offline. Where does the telco fit into this picture in your experience in other countries? So on the consumer side in terms of devices, data, phones, etc., the telco is very often the front. The telco actually is go-to-market. Okay, but in devices like this, it's possible that the telco won't be. But who is go-to-market and do they normally go-to-market with a telco as part of the picture? Where does the telco actually come in? Because clearly the customer is not going to buy these devices and then look for a connection for them or whatever.
Can I come in here?
Please.
So I mean, I see the role of telco being at the first point, the front line of any adoption of new technologies in home, which addresses your points of the information gap, interoperability, setup, integration, migration if required from earlier technologies that are there. The second part is actually layering services. So how do you layer services which are being provided by third party that actually prove the benefits for any of these new devices that can be in smart homes? And third, finally, how do you actually make sure that the core services that telco provides, which is data and bandwidth, is provided on and high availability so you can make use of any of these new devices which require all of your core services to perform. So those are the three things. I do think telcos are at the front line. They should be at the front line. It's an opportunity to even look at extending beyond and seeing an integration layer which is from a user experience perspective, because you've got different devices, different interfaces. Somebody needs to bring them all together to make it one simplified user experience for new customers who are buying these technologies.
Okay, great. Tarun, do you have a view on this? Now, again, the connected devices space, I mean, there is often a telco involved, but the customer may not experience it because there's been a deal at the back end or whatever. Then there are other devices which, of course, work over Wi-Fi or something, so there may not be a telco directly involved in that. Ultimately, it's going through a telco's bandwidth. But where do you see the telco's role, and how does the telco actually get a piece of this action?
PK, I'll just take a cue from the lady who was just talking about the security system. So telco is a very critical part of the whole supply chain. And just to give you an example, today, at least we are launching something which is going to be available on our device. It could be any device, a tablet or a phone, where you could look into your house, wherever you are, whichever part of the globe you are, through an application fabric. How it's happening is through the telco connectivity, of course. You could, and then there is a response center which is available. So, for example, an intrusion alarm or something goes off in your house. The level of security, you choose that. So, for example, the first level of security is going to be a normal mail or a normal phone call, you know, on a number that you already fed in. Second level of security could be the response center calls up the emergency services if there is no response. I think adding to the point which Jasmeet said, the intent for device manufacturer like us and a telco to go hand in hand is very essential. For example, we want to give this sort of power in the hand of the consumer. For example, can I have a device like this and in terms of emergency shake it like this and maybe an alarm goes off? Yes, that's true. Can I use the screen and see what's going on in my house and change the sort of angle of the camera? Yes, that's possible. So all this is being possible because at the end of the convergence is a sort of platform which is in your hand, which is another screen. But at the back end, it's all getting connected through a pipe, which is what the telco owns. So it might be a dumb pipe, but that's the backbone, and that's what's connecting everything else in the whole ecosystem. So that's extremely essential, and that's again a very big revenue opportunity. Now, if I look at another point, which is about smart cities, going beyond smart homes, a Wi-Fi experience, which is there in the probably mature economies, is extremely essential. So the more Wi-Fis or the more cities we have which are having a public Wi-Fi, more data consumption, more usage of these apps and these systems is going to be possible. And I think that's also going to proliferate amongst the communities on what is the sort of important, and again, bring in scale and bring down the cost. So it's a sort of an ecosystem which goes hand in hand. So somewhere someone has to do the start, which I think the government has taken the initiative, and it's all going to trickle down.
Jasmeet, what about you? I mean, you're clearly, in a set of devices where, the telco comes in a very critical position and stage. And, these devices, such as what Asha was mentioning, don't work if they're not connected. If the connectivity fails, your entire security anyway goes for a toss. But where does the telco fit in your scheme of things? How does are these back-end deals, are they part of a go-to-market led by some services entities which are offering these, and they tie up with specific telcos?
Right. So, in my opinion, a telco is critical in this entire ecosystem, and they have multiple roles to play. One, as Vishal said, a telco needs to act as an aggregator. They need to touch base with developers, educate them. They need to lay the infrastructure that can in turn help them provide service, and they also need to partner with OEM. So they need to aggregate the builder community, the OEM community, the infrastructure developers, and get them all together to offer the services that we need, that we are talking about. So telco as an aggregator. Second, telco as a service provider, as an infra provider. So you have fiber to the home. Now, that's another driver of the smart home concept. It's already come in Gurgaon. It's already come in Bangalore. You have fiber which reach to a site where a developer is making a building, and developer just needs to add one smart module, and then entire home is smart enabled. So that again is a critical role that a telco needs to play. And third, and one of the most important from an OEM perspective, as PK was mentioning, telco as a market maker, as a go-to market channel, because telco has the connect with each of us, and that kind of connect cannot be replicated by OEM or by a developer. So telco also needs to help make this market. And by making this market is educating the customers and telling them actually what kind of services and products are possible. Now, specifically to answer PK's question in terms of partnership, Honeywell already partners with AT&T in USA. There's a dedicated network that AT&T creates for Honeywell, and all our intrusion and our video products go through that dedicated pipeline that AT&T has created. So there, AT&T and Honeywell are actually partners, and we serve millions of consumers in the USA. Now, I'm sure that concept can also be replicated in a developing market like India. So just to summarize, telco as an aggregator, telco as a market maker, and telco as an infra and service provider.
So, just to add to this question, what is the kind of opportunity, as far as, let's take data. Now, clearly, with some of the M2M applications, it's very, very low burst mode data. Like, for example, let's say a cellular interface in an electricity meter will probably give a reading at the most once a day, and it's a short burst on the SS7 layer or an SMS or whatever. But a video camera, if it is in a remote location where it's actually using cellular, is probably a lot of data.
The biggest data driver is video. Intrusion, home automation, these are just sensors which use a very small bandwidth. Obviously, there are like multiple sensors involved, but still nothing beats the data consumption that a video camera consumes. So very simply, I have cameras in my home, and right now on my smartphone, I can actually see my home and my rooms. So imagine the kind of data that is being pumped. So that is just one home. Now, if we have at least just 2 cameras in every home or most of the homes, imagine the kind of data bandwidth which is being used. And this is just homes that we are talking about. We are not we're not even getting into the commercial space in which we have ATMs, we have retail outlets, warehouses installing multiple cameras, and then there is a central monitoring of the video feed. So that is the kind of scale that can actually come up if we hook on video cameras onto this kind of network. So as I mentioned, the scale and the mass will actually come from video, but even smart home and the sensors do use bandwidth.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with just one question, but yeah, let me take some questions from the audience, please. Go ahead. Could we have a mic over there, please? Brief questions, please. We are short on time. Gentleman at the back behind you. Yeah.
So, PK, first of all, expect a lot of intruders because you've advertised your house so well. So, all of us are excited to look at your house. And I'm Rahul from Design for Use. So, somebody was mentioning about user experience. That's exactly what we do. And I've always wanted to work on home automation since we're watching things on Discovery, since my childhood, because things have been in the market for very long, but I don't think, we see them that often in India, because I guess India needs frugal. So, you can't expect Indians to spend maybe, about $1,000 on all this for their houses. And also at the point of if connectivity loses, I guess, where somebody needs to focus is, India still is basic. Yes, we all have smartphones, but how many smartphones use data? And that's exactly where your SMS comes in. So if you want to, build something that the gate gets opened automatically when you're 10 meters away from your house, maybe, yeah, if you're not, everybody's not connected to data, but they maybe a simple SMS saying open to 3, 4, 5, 6 could, just open your gate. So maybe those were my comments. Thanks.
Okay, good point. Okay, we have a gentleman at the back. Mike at the back, please.
Good afternoon. This is Sarvesh Gora from iYogi. And PK is an observation and a question to the panel, and I think a larger question here. Two basic things which are emerging from the discussion we are having right now. But the first thing first, the limitations on the networks is what causes right at the starters, we are facing a problem there. Even your current devices, whether your cell phones or iPads of the world, they're not getting serviced badly. In the city, you drive from one point to another point, your signal drops 5 times. And not getting into the licensing and all that issue, but the quality of networks, the quality of service is so poor. Okay, now one says, what are the malice here? Now, same old story that they started shaving it so much that they're down to bones now, there are no margins left. So to the other point, when we're saying there are, when we talk of connected homes, we talk of smart devices, the whole issue should be that all the players in the game, whether I am a device manufacturer or whether I am a service provider or I'm a telco, unless they really decide as to how the hell the revenue share is going to work, this is not going to happen. And the user need to be told, look, my dear friend, this costs money. With due respect, we are, especially in India, we've been spoiled so badly with 30 paisa a minute call rates kind of a thing and free access to Facebooks of the world. Come on. You can't keep just having a free ride forever. And people are not willing to pay. And all these things cost money, and you're kind of like Jasmeet was saying just now, we're talking of video communications. We people are still happy using free Skype, that. So I think the issue would be more in terms of telcos be able to understand, look, going forward, this is money down there. There is lots of revenue they can make out of data services, which they have not been able to make, with due respect. So they need to think through that and then be able to say, okay, fine, if there are guys who are going to play the ball together, now let's decide and let's go to the consumer and tell them, look, fine, you will get it, you'll get good service, but be prepared to pay. So that's an observation I had on that.
Yeah, good point. I think, clearly the criticality of communication is maybe an order of magnitude higher for let's say a security system which needs to report an intrusion. Than it is maybe for you making a regular call, and most of the time we can't connect. We forget data. Even voice calls are not connecting. The only point is that at least for a lot of the machine-to-machine usage, which is not necessary, not video. Perhaps video is very intensive. The kind of short burst mode communications, those are easier to provision for. So, for example, if you because typically they are fixed applications. It's an ATM. It's a so the telco knows, and it's easier for the telco to provision for even 10,000 devices in a given base station area which it knows will be there and is predictable, and it will give headroom against that, than it is when suddenly there's a traffic jam in Gurgaon and there are 10,000 people who are stuck on that road and all are trying to connect, and obviously they can't because that tower is overloaded. So, but clearly absolutely, I mean, reliability of this I think would be a huge issue. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that. Anyone on the panel?
Nothing on reliability, but I would like to summarize in saying that, we've been reaching out to builders because we feel that's an audience that we need to go, that's a channel that we need to actually see how we can effectively get our smart home solution to consumers. 7 out of 10 builders that we have discussions with, over 50 plus right now, are excited about bringing this to market. So the smart home or home automation is going to be a mainstay over the next 24, 36 months. I think taking from what my esteemed colleague on the right said, there are 3 roles that a telco can play, and since most of you are from telecom companies, you have to see whether you want to be a pipe, you want to be an aggregator, you want to be a market maker, and I think you can play all those 3 roles very effectively, and you are ideally suited to do that. So that would be my summation to this discussion.
Okay, do we have more questions? You have, okay, go ahead, please. Okay, yeah, sure. Mic in front, please. Lady in front.
Hi, yes, thank you. Sorry, I have to, just one more question or point of view. Is from a woman's point of view, I think the revolution of a smart home in India would be for every mother to have the option to work from home, to have the infrastructure for it. So many mothers have to take off to take care of home, but they can still do it, but they can't come to office.
So that's a good point, and I think the work from home market is actually a very big driver of connectivity, potentially a very big driver of connectivity. There are some companies which have also experimented with this for BPO, and for domestic BPO, where in low-cost solutions which are actually then over broadband. So broadband with VPN and with some other basic supports, it's not very expensive. Then of course work from home. Otherwise, essentially you need a good workplace and good connectivity. So that's a pretty good, I think, as part of a smart home. It's a good alternate, kind of goalpost to put. What do you guys think?
No, absolutely. So I'll just share a personal experience. So my wife is, she works, and she exactly had the same dilemma 1 year ago. So we have a young kid at home, and she did not want to go to office and be in that uncertainty as to what's happening with the kid. So it's a slightly indirect way of answering your question, but what the solution that we adopted was that we installed cameras, we installed intrusion alarms, and then now wherever she's traveling, she's working from office, on a laptop, there's always one screen open in which she can monitor what's happening at home. So it's not exactly enabling her to work from home, but it's enabling her to work better. It's giving her that peace of mind that she can see what's happening at home. And so this is a very clear example and a personal case in which technology has actually enabled a user, given him or her the peace of mind to become more productive and to work better. And so I'm sure there are other cases like that as well, in which technology actually helps us work better and gives us more productivity. So I'm sure we can take it to the next level and make it even easier.
So, just to add to that, this is very much, it's about corporate policy and how much of inclusion is practiced by companies. Some companies are very ahead of the curve there. IBM is one example. There are quite a few other MNCs which encourage working from home, especially for women. They have a full SOP defined for it, what your workplace should be like, cut off. I mean, you still have to be professional and participate in conference calls, even if you have a kid at home, etc. So, you define. So they actually have a fairly long document which defines what you do. And I know many, many women who work in companies like IBM and a few others. The technology is defined, the use of VPN, the use of broadband, what is the minimum broadband you should have, what's the equipment you have. The company actually pays for that. And a few of these companies, again, including IBM, actually pay you a certain amount, pay a certain amount of your expenses there. In fact, they cover those expenses. Because actually, if you work from home, it reduces the cost of an employee support systems in the office. So
yeah, I totally agree with you. And, but the only challenge is that most areas in India do not have a broadband connection, so that becomes a big problem.
Most who don't?
Areas.
Areas.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not strictly correct. Broadband is now, the reach is very, very high. Its usage is very, very low. Wireline broadband, they're only still about 25 million actual connections, but in terms of the availability, it is there to about 200 million homes. I mean, in other words, in areas which, so if a given home, if you go to a given home in a city, you'll probably not have broadband, but it has access to broadband. So in terms of availabilities, it's very much there. For a variety of reasons in terms of usage, etc., I think we saw that in the earlier broadband session. And we're really stuck here, and all the growth is happening in mobile broadband with different applications, etc. And a lot of it is not really broadband. But wireline broadband, we are completely stuck in the dark ages. We are still at sub 30 million, really. So that's absolutely a huge challenge. Any other questions at the back? So I want to leave you, sorry, was there a question?
Just one at the back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Where, at the back? Yeah, okay, so could we have a mic there at the back?
Working? The question just arose after listening to the discussions. Most of the connectivity to the smart home, something what Jaspreet just said, that his wife is able to monitor what's going on at home using the data that is, the videos that are being streamed out of the home to the mobile. Most of the mobile connections are not leak-proof. Most of the voice connections that are available these days on the mobiles are easily tapped. They are tapped officially by the government, and they are also tapped illegally by others. Is it going to be that the next generation broadband, mobile broadband that we are talking about, with which we will be talking about connectivity to smart homes, will be again intrusion free, or will it be allowed that my home, which is video monitored, where I'm able to see what's going on in my home, but so are others who are also seeing it, and those are the people who are possibly not just hackers, but those are the people who are probably interested in doing some criminal activity at my home. So how, what are the device makers, the telcos, the entire ecosystem, what are they doing to secure these connectivities and secure the data that is being beamed out of these homes? That is the question that I have. My name is Debashish Bhattacharya.
Okay, so I think the question is, are these security systems, are they secure? Is their video secure? Is their connectivity secure?
Can I have a quick comment? Mr. Bhattacharya, I think you're absolutely right. Security is lagging behind the adoption of these technologies because it's not only one device manufacturer or a telco, or because it's interoperability within different types of devices and applications in that ecosystem. So there's bound to be leakages of how somebody can actually access data or your feed or unlock your door. So those things are lagging behind right now in terms of smartphone adoption, and I think those things will catch up sooner than later.
I think, I mean, this is a cat and mouse game. You will find any electronic system, the moment you put in a transducer, a sensor, and connectivity into a device, you can potentially misuse it. One simple example is electricity meter readers. It's now 15 years old, a sensor which sends out your electricity meter current status and reading. If you have a device which can intercept that, you can just drive down a city block and mark all the houses which are unoccupied. It takes 30 seconds to map a city block of 1,000 homes. Okay. So you now know, okay, these are the houses which are not occupied right now. Now, obviously, you can misuse that information. Having said that, I'd just like to add that it is not that easy right now to intercept GSM and 3G communication at an individual level. Governments and military do have equipment to do it. It's far easier to intercept and use metadata, which of course is being done, and the governments are of course able to fully intercept. Now, newer systems which are coming in are getting, so there is again this cat and mouse game. iOS 8 encryption is supposed to be at a level which cannot be opened, cannot be cracked even under a law enforcement warrant because of the way the security keys are. So the BlackBerry's enterprise service, you know, the BES, had that as a huge advantage that, you know, even if they came, law enforcement came with a warrant, BlackBerry doesn't have that key. Okay, so that's PGP encryption. The keys don't sit with BlackBerry. So this is something, it's a moving target. I think, you know, it's a trade-off between personal convenience and security, and you have to figure out what a FaceTime chat that you do with somebody, technically it can be intercepted. So I'd just like to, you know, we need to wrap up in a few minutes. Just leave this last question with the panel. How do you think this extends into this whole smart city thing, the smart home, in terms of opportunities for telcos? We've been hearing a lot about smart cities. We had, I think that they were mentioned earlier too in the day, but Mr. Modi is interested in smart cities. There is the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which wants to build smartish cities all along the corridor. What's the opportunity, what are the kind of opportunities there that you see happening for telcos? Anyone want to give it a shot?
Let me just contribute there, PK. So again, smart city, new word, new buzzword that's in the market. But what exactly is it? Very few people actually know what really a smart city you know, comprises of. And even we as OEMs are just trying to understand what exactly would be in a smart city. We understand there's city surveillance, but is smart city more than that? And if you look at some of the other cities which have or which can be tagged as smart, there's just sky is the limit. So you have city surveillance, you have traffic management, you have utilities, smart utilities. Essentially everything in a city that interacts with you can be made smart. And if that is a definition that Mr. Modi has, and that's the vision that he has, then believe me, again, sky is the limit for OEMs, for telcos, and also for IT network providers. So let me take one component of smart city, which is city surveillance. That is just one subset. Now, city surveillance, almost 50% of the cost of a city surveillance project is for a network provider, or these can be telcos, or these can be IBMs and Ciscos of the world. But again, these are multi-crore projects, and almost 50% of every project is just the infrastructure that needs to go there. So again, huge opportunity. Again, smart city and city surveillance is just taking up. There are a few cities who are piloting it. The Bombay city surveillance project has been going on for, I don't know how long. Multiple versions have been taken out of the same tender, because right now I think the community also needs to scale up to the concept that is aspired to. But just to answer your question in very short, all of us, telcos, IT providers, OEMs, have a huge opportunity if smart city actually is actually envisioned and actually implemented.
I just returned from Kashmir, the city where I was born and I grew up. It's suffered unthinkable devastation in many ways. If there was flood monitoring and sensors that were actually in place, which would become an ingredient of a smart city, a lot of the inconvenience could have been avoided through early monitoring and early signals. So that's just one use case which I can see in my very last week that could have actually come and helped in a situation like this and saved lives.
I think it's great you mentioned that. You know, one of the first steps that the government of India is taking toward the cleaning, the massive project of the cleaning of the Ganga, is putting in sensors at something like, I don't know, I think initially about a couple of dozen locations which will monitor 200 sources of pollution at the river, and in real time report violations which will be detected based on the type of pollutants that sensor is detecting, and a map of course, what are the likely sources of those pollutants, because it's known which industries are discharging. These are electronic sensors connected through, presumably through telcos, and huge opportunity in such, applications of sensors across rivers and across cities. Tarun, any closing comments from you on this?
Yes, PK. So I think, needless to say, the whole concept is very interesting and offers a huge opportunity both for the industry and for the consumers. It starts with as basic as having a optical backbone to start driving these things, and then goes to basic stuff like surveillance, and then layers are added right to the consumer's houses, and then again it gets personalized when you start embracing stuff which is personal to you in terms of handheld devices, and using that information on multiple screens to make your life much easier. So I think overall it's a very positive move, and I personally feel it's a great opportunity to be in the country at this point in time with all this automation and digitization being spearheaded by the government themselves.
Terrific. I think, my closing observation on this would be that one of the measures of a smart city or a smart home, I think one of the key measures is really looking at efficiency of energy, of use of other resources. I think for telcos itself, it's an opportunity on two fronts. One is, of course, the utilization, the delivery of these services through your networks and channels. The other is the adoption of these technologies, because telcos in India are enormous energy hogs. They are the second biggest consumer of diesel after the transportation sector. And some of the telcos, roughly 20% of their top line, up to 20% of their top line is going into energy, largely again diesel on the towers. And I think after the smart home and the smart city, we should be looking at a whole conference on smart telcos, which are able to use these technologies to actually cut down your energy consumption. And you might actually do a lot more to your top line, or at least to your bottom line, than what you are going to get through smart homes subscribing to your services. So that's really it. We've come to the end. Thank you very much for your participation, and all of you on the panel. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Speaker.
you.